Chapter 45. Going hunting in the mountains tomorrow, will you join? Tang Zelen sat for a while in front of his comrade's grave. When he was descending the mountain, he happened to bump into Peng Sanai, who had just finished his errands. Grandpa Sanai. Ah, you went out. Peng Sanai saw him coming from the direction of the mountain and hesitated before asking, "Did you go to see Xiaojun?" Tang Zelen nodded. Yeah, had some drinks with him. Peng Sanai sighed and said nothing. Some things didn't need to be voiced, they were understood in the heart. Walking with Tang Zelen a few steps inside, he suddenly said, "Just went to old Gangtu's house. People in the village want to go hunting in the mountains, possibly in the next few days. You staying here for a few days, lad? Interested in joining them for a look?" Into the mountains to hunt, Tang Zelen showed a pleased expression. Yep, someone came back from the mountains and saw something good, thinking about fresh meat. A bunch of rascals, young but with gluttonous mouths, all beseeched at the door of the old hunter's house. That's great, I love it. He too was someone who enjoyed venturing into the mountains. This vacation had left him feeling hairy all over. If people from Peng village were going hunting, of course, he wanted to go, and maybe he would even drag Yuan Xiao along to let the pampered child of privilege also experience what local customs were like. Once inside, Peng Sanai mentioned the hunting plan to Peng Chunlai, who jumped up excitedly, slapping Peng Sanai's hand repeatedly in praise. That hunter Zhang can only be summoned by you, Grandpa Sanai, so it's settled then. It's settled, go arrange it, Peng Sanai nodded in agreement. Upon hearing this good news, village chief Peng Chunlai no longer lingered with his drink. After speaking with Tang Zelen and Yuan Xiao, he hurried off to make arrangements. Going into the mountains to hunt was a risky affair. They had been preparing for some time, as Hunter Zhang from East Mountain had been silent, but unexpectedly it cleared up today, a rare occurrence indeed. After his departure, Yuan Xiao was puzzled. "Boss, what's the situation here? I was just chatting with Uncle about modernizing rural reforms." Tang Zelen patted his shoulder, laughing, "Still talking about pilot projects, wondering if you can scrape together anything dry to do all day." "What I scrape together isn't dry." Yuan Xiao patted his belly. "I've got a belly full of strategies for getting rich just waiting to be showcased." "Go show off somewhere else," Tang Zelen retorted with a laugh. Yuan Xiao leaned in and asked, "I saw you whispering with Grandpa San as you came in, all smiles. What were you guys chatting about?" "People in the village are going into the mountains to hunt tomorrow. Want to join?" "Holy crap, really?" Yuan Xiao's excitement rose. Tang Zelen gave him a look. "Are you going or not?" "Of course I'm going, you don't know me too well, I love this stuff." Leaning closely, he asked, "What are we hunting, can we handle it?" Tang Zelen thought for a moment. "Don't know, I'll ask Grandpa Sanai later. Are your skills up to it?" "What do you mean up to it? It's a must." Yuan Xiao squinted his eyes, tilting his head in a manner suggesting you underestimate me. "Buddy, have I not streaked through the jungles of Africa, shooting arrows and wooing girls? Hunting is nothing hard." Tang Zelen crossed his arms thinking, "Let's just see you showing off quietly." In the evening after dinner, Tang Zelen accompanied Peng Sanai for a digestive stroll outside. During their walk, Peng Sanai suddenly said, "When you get up early tomorrow, pick something suitable from the storeroom. Once we are in the mountains, remember to be cautious." Tang Zelen laughed. "Grandpa Sanai, do you really need to worry about me?" He was practically a native of the mountains. Peng Grandpa, caution is the parent of safety. "Yes, okay," Tang Zelen obediently agreed. Originally, this hunter Zhang wasn't planning to go into the mountain, but today he suddenly agreed to lead the team there. It is said that he noticed the wildlife in the mountain has recently increased. He thought about it a lot and couldn't figure out why. He figured since there's more game, it would be good to go hunt some. Otherwise, if things in the mountains became too excessive, it wouldn't be good, Peng Grandpa said as he walked. Tang Zelen said, "Grandpa, I see you've been preoccupied. Are you worried that something's not right in the mountains?" "Ah," Peng Grandpa sighed. "I can't really say. The times are too peaceful. Who would complain that the days are too good, but when things go too smoothly, it always makes one feel uneasy." He straightened his back and looked at the distant rice fields, saying, "Maybe it's because I'm old and I've become less courageous, not like you young ones who dare to take risks." "Grandpa, you shouldn't say that. You're in your 80s and still able to chop wood every day. Truly, that's growing old with vigor." "Forget it, you monkey are just trying to cheer up this old man." Tang Zelen laughed heartily, and the grandfather and grandson strolled around Peng village for a bit before returning home to sleep. That night Yuan Zio slept soundly, snoring like thunder. Tang Zelen was woken up by his snoring in the middle of the night, and having no choice, he put on his clothes and went outside to cool off. The bright moon was in the sky, the stars twinkled, the lights in the village were out, and it was silent, with just an occasional bark of a dog that wasn't disturbing. He turned to gaze at the mountains behind him. The lush woods from the daytime were now a dark mass. A cool breeze passed, and the sound of rustling leaves filled the air. The silent mountain, the tranquil village, the air filled with a faint smell of earth and a slight fragrance of grass and trees, all of it gradually calmed Tang Zelen's mind. Standing on the boundary between ancient tradition and modern civilization in Peng village, there was an indescribable beauty. Suddenly, a familiar voice sounded from behind. "Tang Captain, you better leave." Tang Zelen was suddenly startled, turning around only to see a familiar face behind him, Peng Xiaojun. Still in the familiar olive green, the same honest face, Peng Xiaojun had just suddenly appeared before him, and Tang Zelen was momentarily frozen. "Peng Xiaojun." "Tang Captain, leave quickly." Tang Zelen snapped back to reality, emotional. He took 2 big steps forward, but Peng Xiaojun stepped back. "Tang Captain, you better leave." "Peng Xiaojun, you come here." Tang Zelen shouted loudly. He still had a lot to talk to him about. When Peng Xiaojun finally disappeared, he shouted loudly, "Tang Captain, leave quickly." "Peng Xiaojun." With a loud shout, Tang Zelen suddenly sat up in bed, and when he regained his senses, he realized it had all been a dream. Just lifting his head, he saw a pair of dark eyes staring back at him. Yuan Zio, wearing only a shirt and pants, was squatting on the kang, hugging his legs and staring at him. "Boss, are you possessed or something?" Tang Zelen threw a pillow at him. "Damn it, you're the one who's possessed." Yuan Zio moved closer, sat cross-legged next to him, and casually pulled up the lamp by the wall, curiously asking, "Boss, do you know the nonsense you were spouting in your dream?" Tang Zelen took out a cigarette from the pocket next to him and lit it. "Like what?" Yuan Zio blinked his big eyes and pursed his lips, saying, "You promised us 2 hot chicks." "Get lost," Tang Zelen cursed. He, actually no. You were yelling for Peng Xiaojun the whole time in your dream, brother. Are you like the people in this village? Curse it in your dreams." Tang Zelen didn't respond but took a harsh drag on his cigarette and slowly exhaled, then suddenly turned to stare at Yuan Zio. Yuan Zio tingled with nervousness at his gaze. "Bro, don't look at me like that. It's freaky in the middle of the night." "Urfet, let me ask you, do you believe in all that supernatural mumbo-jumbo?" "No way. Born in the new China, raised under the Red Flag, descendant of the Red Army, my belief is in communism, and my ideal is to strive for the rise of the motherland using renminbi. Do you still want to sleep in this room?" He glared threateningly with narrowed eyes. Yuan Zio honestly said, "You're allowed to bear arms and stand guard for the country, but you won't allow Comrade Zio Yuan to contribute to the GDP of the country. That's dictatorial." "I'm serious here." Yuan Zio seriously replied, "I don't believe." Tang Zelen frowned. In his dream, Peng Xiaojun kept telling him to hurry up. Why he urged him to hurry up, which related to the dream Peng Lhasa had, different words but similar meanings, confused Tang Zelen in the dead of the night. Yuan Zio also took a cigarette from his pack and said beside him, "Although I don't believe, after wandering around for a few years and coming back, I've had a profound thought." Tang Zelen looked up at him lightly, signaling him to continue. Inspired, Yuan Zio expressed his opinion. "My thought is, the more a place leans towards a primitive lifestyle, the more room there is for such things to exist and develop. Like us, living in cities saturated with modern technology, such phenomena lack the space to exist and grow, and if they do, it's minimal. That's why many of us don't believe. Look, a village like Peng Village that can still largely sustain itself is honestly rare nowadays, with every household having electricity and internet. Keeping ancient customs in a village today, it's too hard. But today, I talked with the village chief of Peng Village for most of the day, and I noticed something really strange." Tang Zelen took a drag on his cigarette and pointed to a can of beer by the side of the Kang bed. Understanding his cue, Yuan Zio picked it up, opened it, and handed it to him. Tang Zelen drank as Yuan Zio continued. "I heard from the village chief that Peng Village didn't have roads for vehicles to enter the mountains before. Your car, had it been 4 or 5 years ago, couldn't have made it in at all. To enter the mountains, one had to climb and cross ridges, am I right?" Right. He had walked the mountain paths when he came to visit Grandpa Peng some years ago. Seeing no reaction from him, Yuan Zio felt disappointed when his big reveal didn't get the expected response and continued. "There's a mountain spring in the back mountains, did you know?" "I knew." Yuan Zio was internally devastated. How could he continue this conversation when he thought he had new information? After finishing the beer and flicking cigarette ash into the empty can, Tang Zelen said, "I know every plant and tree in these mountains better than you do with my eyes closed. Cut the nonsense and get to the point." Yuan Zio said, "When you went up the mountain in the evening to see your comrade in arms, I heard something particularly interesting from the village chief, something that has happened recently. I'm sure you don't know about it." "Go on." Just as Yuan Zio was about to speak, a sudden noise outside startled him. "Hold on, I'll go check it out." Without a second thought, he hopped off the Kang, shuffled in his slippers to the window, listened for a while, still uncertain, and then stealthily pushed open the door to check outside. Tang Zelen sat on the Kang, watching his brother's superstitious antics, curious yet he didn't call out to him. Only when a cat's meow came from outside did he hear Yuan Zio come back in, shivering and breathing heavily, and he climbed back under the covers to warm up. "It's nothing, just a cat on a midnight walk. Anyway, where did I leave off? You said you heard something interesting." "Ah, right. I remember now. Continuing on, after you left, I had a casual chat with the village chief. As the conversation unfolded, we touched upon the locally grown rice in Peng Village that's currently in high demand. Apparently, they've taken on quite a few large orders recently." Tang Zelen frowned. "What's so peculiar about that?" "The peculiar part is, after the first large order was made, the elderly in Peng Village began to have the same dream. Now, isn't that strange?" Yuan Zio's expression, coupled with the tone of his voice, made the late-night conversation seem all too real. Tang Zelen pondered for a moment before saying, "What you mean is, there's something wrong with the village." "Well, that's just a guess. Whether it is or it isn't, I really couldn't say." Yuan Zio paused, smacking his lips before continuing. "But when you think about it, if these two things really are connected, bro, doesn't it give you the creeps? If you've done nothing guilty, you've got nothing to fear from ghosts knocking on your door. What should I be afraid of? Is it you who's scared?" Tang Zelen laughed and flicked off some ash from his cigarette. Yuan Zio nodded. "You said it. I wasn't feeling anything off, but just now in the dead of night, even you had a nightmare. Honestly, I'm feeling a bit shaky myself. You didn't dream about anything. Yuan Zio shook his head. Nope, when I was born, my grandma had someone look at me, said I was so full of yang energy I was almost smoking, and that even ghosts would piss themselves and flee at the sight of me. I don't attract that kind of stuff. Looking at the watch, it was already past 3 a.m. They could hardly sleep much longer with dawn approaching, so Tang Zelen asked Yuan Zio if he was going back to sleep. Yuan Zio had been woken up by Tang Zelen's sleep-talking in the middle of the night, and after their stimulating conversation, his sleepiness had faded. They figured there was no point lying down for just a little bit longer. Tang Zelen suggested going for a run. The moment Yuan Zio heard this, he flopped back down, pulled the blanket over his face and cried out, "Bro, spare me, please. Running around in the dead of night, people in the village will think a madman's been let loose. I'd rather get some sleep." Tang Zelen kicked him and cursed. "You coward! Did you get discharged from the military just so you could avoid running?" Yuan Zio didn't have the nerve to respond. While Yuan Zio tried to catch up on his sleep, Tang Zelen, wide awake now, stepped outside and began exercising in the courtyard beneath the night sky. At the crack of dawn, the rooster crowed. Peng Chunlai got up early and smiled faintly upon seeing the neat pile of freshly chopped firewood in the corner of the courtyard. His sleep was light, yet he wondered how he hadn't heard Xiaoteng chopping wood. In the morning, after everyone had breakfast, those who were preparing to go on the hunting expedition gathered at Peng Chunlai's place. Tang Zelen and Yuan Zio, being visitors, stood aside and didn't interject. The village chief, Peng Chunlai, was directing on site, and the hunting leader was the veteran hunter, Hunter Zhang. He was in his 40s or 50s, lean and taciturn, sitting off to the side on a wooden stump and smoking, waiting to depart. Yuan Zio, with his alert eyes, looked around the gathering a few times before whispering to Tang Zelen, "My word, dozens of people have shown up to hunt rabbits in the mountain." Tang Zelen lowered his voice and said, "There may be something good to hunt today." "Like what?" "You'll know when we get there." "Cut it out, you're keeping secrets now." Meanwhile, the village chief Peng Chunlai was discussing the final arrangements with Chunlai. At first, Chunlai simply nodded in agreement, but later, something the village chief said clearly offended him, causing Chunlai to abruptly rebuke him. Tang Zelen noticed that when Chunlai scolded the village chief, the latter's expression was somewhat strange. Years of professional instinct made Tang Zelen suspect that this hunting trip to the mountain might not be as straightforward as it seemed. Yuan Zio, on the other hand, wasn't thinking that far ahead. He was more concerned about what good things they might catch hunting in the mountain today. What could there be in the mountains nowadays? Maybe rabbits, roe deer, or wild boars, right? Surely they weren't going to hunt wolves. "Boss, I've got a question for you." He suddenly nudged Tang Zelen with his elbow. "Ahem. Do people in the village hunt wolves?" "We generally don't mess with wolves." "Oh," after a pause he asked again, "so when do they hunt wolves?" "When the wolf packs come down the mountain and start causing trouble for people." "Oh," Yuan Zio sounded a bit disappointed. Tang Zelen chuckled softly. "You're quite wild at heart, eh? You even want to hunt wolves. If you go into the mountains now and find me a few wolves, I'll be impressed." Yuan Zio nodded. "True, in this day and age, wolves, tigers, they're all nearly extinct. Bro, I just like excitement. It's not often I get to venture deep into the primeval forest, so I just thought a bit more, that's all." Tang Zelen suddenly warned him seriously. "After we enter the mountains, don't wander off aimlessly. I haven't been in these woods either, so I don't know what's in there. You see the preparation they have. Even regular hunters who aren't used to the mountains wouldn't dare to go in deep. We are outsiders here. Let's not cause trouble for the local villagers." "Got it." While the brothers were chatting softly, the face of Peng Village's third grandpa had already relaxed. Finally, everybody checked the tools they were carrying. At Peng Chunlai's command, dozens of people, led by the hunter Zhang and the village chief, entered the mountain. When Tang Zelen and Yuan Zio left, each pulled something handy from third grandpa's storeroom. Tang Zelen took an old bow and arrows, which third grandpa had used when he was young. He had handled it before and was familiar with it. He also tucked a dagger into his waistband, just in case, and then set out. Yuan Zio had played with archery before, but that was the sporting kind. As for the village's simple, brutally practical attack bows, he had never touched them. After some thought, he decided to abandon the idea, lest he injured himself, which was bad enough, but hurting someone else would be even worse. So he grabbed a lightweight and sharp sickle instead. Seeing the tool he chose, Tang Zelen gave him an approving thumbs up with a chuckle. Yuan Zio tilted his chin up, all of a sudden feeling like he had the strength to lift mountains and the spirit to cover the world. After the hunting party left, only the elderly, women, and children remained in the village. Third grandpa was too old to enter the mountains, so he organized a group of old fellows to prepare the evening meal, waiting for the hunter's return. The whole village would then gather to enjoy the pork dish feast. Such a grand event hadn't occurred since the beginning of the year, and everyone felt that, regardless of the outcome, it was an opportunity for the entire village to come together. The good harvest alone this year was a cause for celebration. The mountain range where Peng Village was located was complex and crisscrossed. The mountains in the front were not very high, yet there were numerous peaks. To truly navigate them, one would have to climb every single peak, one after another. Perhaps because it was closer to human habitation, signs of villagers having passed through were often visible in the mountains in front. Along the way, plenty of wild vegetables and fruits could be seen as well. Yuan Zio and Tang Zelen followed at the back of the group, admiring the mountain forest scenery as they walked. Others were there for the game, but Yuan Zio had come purely for the joy of sightseeing. As such, even Tang Zelen found his constant exclamations and noisiness along the way unbearable. Whining in the mountains, with the way you act, who would believe you've been to the African jungle? Tang Zelen had just reached out to steady a young man who nearly tripped over a vine. "Thank you," the young man blushed and hurried forward. "You're welcome," Tang Zelen said with a slight smile. Yuan Zio retorted, "You can't compare the two. When I went there it was for sightseeing, and besides, the jungle there is nothing like ours here. Their woods aren't as elegant as ours. Over there, come nightfall, even the damn mosquitoes are this big." He circled his thumb and forefinger around his chest exaggeratedly and said, "Believe it or not, I could catch 3 of them and stir-fry a dish." Tang Zelen didn't laugh, but a few villagers walking ahead of them did. Some turned around and asked, "Are the mosquitoes there really that big?" "Absolutely not." Yuan Zio had found his loyal audience who didn't require any drafts for boasting. He began vividly telling the neighboring villagers about his adventurous experiences in the primeval jungle in Africa. Seeing that the crowd around him was listening intently to his stories, Tang Zelen helplessly shook his head and stepped aside. "I'm going to check up front." Go ahead, I'll chat with the locals," Yuan Zio replied. Hunter Zhang was a mature and steady hunter. As Tang Zelen walked with him for a while, he had made up his mind about him. As he approached, Hunter Zhang turned his head and looked at him twice. The look in his eyes was indiscernible, but Tang Zelen intuitively felt that Hunter Zhang wasn't rejecting him. Because at the front of the squad, apart from Hunter Zhang not being talkative, people like the village chief and a few other villagers who knew him would engage him in brief conversations. While Tang Zelen was talking and laughing with everyone, he also casually picked up bits of information from the villagers' talks, like how challenging the mountain roads were, what they could hunt, heard that the village had developed well recently, and whether everyone's crops were thriving, among other topics. The people of Peng village were quite familiar with him and had a good impression of him. Although he was a high-ranking official from a big city, he had visited their village several times, always amiable without any airs, and the villagers were willing to get close to him. As he chatted, Tang Zelen actually got to know what he wanted from the villagers' conversations. It turned out that the college kid wasn't merely making wild guesses. The people in Peng village had indeed begun dreaming of deceased relatives quite frequently, and it seemed to have started recently right after the first batch of large orders. Tang Zelen curiously asked, "How big was that first booming order?" 1,000 kilograms, a villager happily said. "Indeed, that's not small, right? I heard the client is a young woman doing business with her friends from the south. Since then, our lake rice has been selling well, hasn't it?" Yes, right after that order, the head of the Chunhao family said that this year's business had taken off. Don't look at her as just a young woman. She is also a boss and a wealthy god of fortune bringing us luck, another villager exclaimed happily. Suddenly, a villager slapped the village chief on the shoulder. "Village chief, I heard from my wife that the Chunhao family said that the female client might come to Peng village." "Oh," Peng Chunlai slapped his forehead, "how could I forget this? I've been so preoccupied with going hunting. Right, did your wife mention when she might come?" "I'm not sure about that. It should be in the next couple of days, I think. I'll ask her later and let you know," the villager said. Tang Zelen was somewhat surprised. "What, the village's rice is so popular this year that people are coming here to stock up?" Peng Chunlai said, "I'd welcome anyone with money to come here and buy our grains. But setting that aside, to come all the way from Sea City to our little place, she must surely be sincere about her survey. We can't neglect her, and we don't even know when she will arrive. It'd be bad if she came today making it seem like we're unwelcoming." Tang Zelen laughed and said, "Isn't there still people in the village?" "True, let's keep going. I was telling you, Hunter Zhang is in good form today. I reckon we might really catch something nice." "That would be great." A team of people marched mightily into the deep mountains. Before long, under the blazing sun, abundant sunshine pierced through the glass, warming Su Shu's face intensely. In such heat, even the sun visor was ineffective. The car had traveled all the way from Sea City to the entrance of Peng village and finally stopped. Staring at the winding, interminable mountain road, unsure if she was on the right path, she parked the car and got out just as a bullock cart approached from the distance. She hurriedly went up to stop it. "Sir, may I ask if this road leads to Peng village?" The elderly cart driver chuckled. "Are you heading to Peng village?" "Yes." "Then you're on the right road. This is the one and only road to Peng village, but do take care driving through the mountains, young lady." "Thank you so much, sir." After the bullock cart had left, Su Shu got back into the driver's seat, relieved she hadn't taken a wrong turn, and started the car, then turned to Zai behind her. "Zai, sit tight, we're heading into the mountains." Zai, holding her dinosaur toy, turned her face from looking out the window to look at Su Shu speaking, then nodded. Afterward, Su Shu noticed the little girl was actually waving at the window. Waving? Was she saying goodbye to someone? Zai's strange behavior didn't much bother Su Shu, who simply suppressed her confusion in her heart. It was not unusual for a quiet child to have some odd behaviors, so she didn't take it to heart. After a 20-minute drive along the winding mountain roads, the car finally entered Peng village. A few children playing at the entrance of the village saw another car entering the village after just one day, and, driven by curiosity, one with quick feet took a shortcut to report back to the village. This was Su Shu's first visit to such an isolated village, and she would have never found it without asking for directions along the way. It wasn't long before she saw the adults from the village coming out to meet her. "Miss, I heard you were introduced by the owner of Chunhua. the one who sells grains at your Sea City grain wholesale market. Su Shu paused, thinking Chunhua summer flowers what? The village chief's wife laughed and said, "Look at me asking. She's the one who sells grains in your Sea City food wholesale market." "Ah, right. Right, I am the person introduced by Boss Yu," Su Shu quickly replied with a smile. Feng Hua looked Su Shu up and down, secretly admiring her appearance, thinking to herself just how refreshing the young lady looked. Being from the big city, would her skin be as supple as it seemed? "It's fine to park your car on the side, let's go inside the house," Feng Hua said with a smile. Her gaze then moved to a little girl standing next to Su Shu, and her eyes brightened. "Wow, this little girl is so pretty. Is she yours?" Such a young girl and already with a child. But Feng Hua held back from asking that question aloud. Zai appeared a bit shy, retreating behind Su Shu, who bent down to pick her up and said to the village chief's wife with a smile, "She's my niece, only 5 years old this year, called Zai." That made sense. Feng Hua suddenly understood, as did the aunts and ladies next to them, who all seemed to have an of realization. Su Shu felt her scalp tighten. She really wasn't used to facing so many women alone. The place prepared to receive Su Shu was the village committee. As soon as Su Shu entered, she suddenly felt as if she had traveled back to the 80s or 90s. The hand-drawn charts on the walls, file folders, the office desk covered with a greenish tablecloth, and the time-stamped enamel jar on the desk certainly added to the atmosphere. If there was also a megaphone used for broadcasting announcements, wouldn't it really feel like returning to the last century? Seeing her distracted, Feng Hua poured her a cup of warm boiled water and placed it by her hand as she just sat down. "What is your honorable surname?" "My name is Su Shu. Sister, you can just call me Su Shu." "All right, my maiden name is Feng, so you can call me Sister Feng," she replied. "Sister Feng," Su Shu called out politely. "Aya." Feng Hua felt a natural fondness for the young lady with fine eyebrows and bright eyes in front of her. Furthermore, she had already heard from her husband that this young lady had come to explore whether they could collaborate with Peng Village on grain production. This made her like Su Shu even more, who doesn't appreciate capable young people. Sitting opposite her, Feng Hua said, "Miss Su, our place is out of the way and we don't have anything fancy to offer you. I hope you won't mind." "Not at all," Su Shu replied. "I've already asked someone to fetch Elder Peng from our village. My husband is the village chief, but you've come at an inconvenient time today. The men and young lads from our village went hunting early this morning and won't be back for a while. Just the elderly, women, and children are left. So the only one who can talk business with you is Elder Peng. Whatever personal needs you have, you can come to me, but if it's work-related, you ask Elder Peng. He can surely take care of things for you," Feng Hua explained. Feng Hua had a silver tongue that made her an important figure among the women in Peng Village, even in the presence of the village chief. Su Shu nodded, smiling. "Sorry to bother you, it was inconsiderate of me. I had only asked Boss Yu for the location of Peng Village before coming here, and I neglected to greet you all first. I hope you don't mind." Feng Hua waved her hand dismissively, laughing. "Not at all, why would we? It's not every day we have such a beautiful young lady pay us a visit. Look, in just a little while, see how many people have gathered outside. Today, the village's young men aren't around, otherwise, I guarantee they would have surrounded the village council building." Su Shu awkwardly laughed, not quite sure how to respond to that. Just when she felt a bit embarrassed, someone outside shouted, "Grandpa San." Feng Hua stood up. "Grandpa San is here." On hearing Grandpa San, Su Shu knew it must be an elder. She quickly put Zai down on the ground and stood up as well. Soon, the door to the village committee room opened and Grandpa San of Peng Village stepped in, wearing his coat. Feng Hua greeted with a smile, "Grandpa San, you've arrived." Grandpa San grunted in acknowledgement, looking up at Su Shu. Su Shu, quick to respond with a slight smile, said, "Hello." Grandpa San nodded his head and took a seat on a chair that Chunlai's wife had brought over. He inquired, "Did you come from Sea City, young lady?" "Yes, I did. I left Sea City early this morning. I wasn't very clear about the route and took some detours, arriving only in the afternoon." "Then you're quite fortunate. Just yesterday, our village had 2 visitors from your province." Su Shu responded brightly, "Really, that is quite a coincidence." What else could she do but go along with the conversation? Grandpa San asked, "What's your honorable family name?" Before Su Shu could open her mouth, Feng Hua had already spoken for her. "Her family name is Su, called Su Shu." "Why don't you let the young lady speak for herself?" Grandpa San frowned and asked Su Shu, "Have you eaten lunch?" "I have," Su Shu smiled. In truth, she hadn't eaten. She had only given Zai some milk and a sandwich. Grandpa San instructed Feng Hua, Chunlai's wife, "Prepare some food for our guest." "All right." After Feng Hua left, Grandpa San's gaze shifted towards Zai, who was leaning against Su Shu's legs. A warm smile broke through the sternness of his old face. "Your daughter?" "No, she's my niece. I'm taking care of her." Grandpa San nodded his head, not pursuing the matter further. "Before you arrived, Chunhua, our head of household, mentioned it. I'm curious what you came to see, Miss Su." In the blink of an eye, Su Shu had become Miss Su in Grandpa San's reference. But he was an elder, and she a junior, so there was nothing amiss with being called a young girl Miss. Su Shu replied, "I'd like to see the lake rice seeds and to look at some quality poultry and mountain goods." Grandpa San chuckled. "Well, you've come to the right place then. Our Pang village might lack other things, but when it comes to mountain goods, we've got plenty. The young men went up the mountain for a hunt today. If you're not in a hurry, Miss Su, why don't you stay for a couple of days and join us for a village meal?" A village meal? Su Shu was momentarily stunned. That's when the whole village comes together to enjoy a pork dish. Ah, okay. A pork dish, all right. She had indeed never tried that before. The arrival of Su Shu was like a beacon of hope flickering above Peng village. Everyone in the village knew that the young lady who drove in with a nice car might bring them a good sum of money, and the bumper harvest from last autumn could fetch a good price. While some were delighted, naturally others were anxious, just like the elders such as Grandpa San, who didn't much agree with the idea of selling grain, especially for some families considering selling their food rations. However, after probing Su Shu's intentions, he discovered she wasn't planning to purchase a large amount of grain. Instead, her interest was stronger in seeds and mountain goods like poultry. This relieved a lot of the pressure on Grandpa San's shoulders. Poultry was raised in every household: chickens, ducks, geese, dogs, you name it, and if the price was right, there were plenty in Peng village willing to sell. As for mountain goods, Peng village was not short on mountains. They lived off the mountains and there was an abundance of mountain produce. Such good deals that could bring income to the villagers were hard to come by. After the chat with Su Shu, even the wrinkles on Grandpa San's face seemed to glow. Su Shu had never been to a village like Peng Mountain Village before. She lived in an extremely convenient modern city, and when she was young, she followed her parents to the rural countryside. But the impression from back then compared to what she saw now, there were many differences. The difference with Peng Village was that, if it wasn't for the newly built road that led out of the village, the entire village was actually in a state of seclusion. Peng Sanai suggested she take a walk on her own to get a feel for things, so Su Shu really did take Zai for a walk in the middle of the village without venturing further inside. One reason was that it would be impolite. The other was that she was unfamiliar with the place. Towards unfamiliar environments, she always had a sense of caution, a shadow and habit left behind from the hard life in her previous existence. She led Zai, who was clutching Dinosaur Jun wherever the two of them went. they became an extremely eye-catching focus. Originally, she thought Zai would find it very difficult to adapt, but to her surprise, the little girl's adaptability was even better than hers. After walking with her for a while, Zai was attracted by the grass-woven crickets in the hands of the surrounding children, wriggled out of her hand, and very naturally followed the local customs. Perhaps because Zai was too pretty, her fair and tender complexion standing out from the village children who spent their days climbing mountains to catch birds and fishing in the rivers. Even though she didn't talk much, she was quite likable. Before long, they all formed one group, and seeing this, Su Shu didn't interrupt but watched the scenery from not too far away. The air in Peng village was truly good, carrying the distinctive scent of grass and trees from the mountains and forests. The fatigue from the drive there had vanished without a trace. When the village chief's wife, Feng Hua, came over to call her for dinner, Su Shu found that the usually quiet Zai had made several new friends. "Oh my, you bunch of little monkeys, how could you take Zai to roll around in the grass? Just look at all the dirt on her pants." Having said that, she quickly went to pat the loose grass off Zai. Zai shied away, not used to it. Feng Hua felt a bit awkward. Seeing this, Su Shu hurriedly apologized with embarrassment. "She's a bit shy around new faces, Sister Feng, please don't mind." "How could I? I just forgot for a moment." Feng Hua laughed off the embarrassment. "You city folks surely don't do things like we do here, letting the kids run wild. I see Zai seems quite happy playing with them." Being adept in social situations among women, Feng Hua quickly steered the conversation away from the slight awkwardness. Although there was a tiny bit of discomfort in her heart, could she as an adult really stoop to the level of a child? However, Feng Hua didn't expect her thoughts to change so soon. Zai must have been truly clever. Although she avoided Feng Hua, she pulled out 2 white rabbit creamy candies from her pocket and put them into the talking Su Shu's hand. Su Shu was puzzled, and upon looking at her, she noticed the timid little girl glancing over at Feng Hua who was speaking non-stop, and she felt a small realization dawn on her. Placing the 2 candies on the table in front of Feng Hua, she smiled warmly. "Sister Feng, the little girl must have been too embarrassed earlier. She's apologizing to you." Feng Hua was taken aback and looked at the candies, then at Zai standing by Su Shu's leg. Her heart instantly melted. She chuckled, "Sister, I'm not jealous, but where did you get such a lovely girl who's so easy to adore? Tell me too, and I'll go pray for one. I'm not fated to have daughters. My boys drive me crazy every day." Su Shu laughed. "Sister Feng, both boys and girls are blessings. Besides, you shouldn't think I'm young. I understand that in the village, having more sons makes things easier." Upon hearing this, Feng Hua's eyes lit up, thinking that although the girl looked delicate, she really had some spiritual energy about her. Changing the subject, she sighed. "It really is different in the village if you don't have a couple of strong men in the house. It's just not manageable, unlike in the city, where you all live in small buildings, right? Once you close your front door at home, you don't have to worry about anyone else's business. But in the village, it's impossible to ignore all the aunties and uncles living around you. There's never a peaceful day." Peng Sana hadn't returned from explaining to the villagers why Su Shu was here to collect things, when Feng Hua started chatting with Su Shu about various matters of the village. Just as they were talking about how early in the morning people from the village had gone hunting in the mountains, they heard thump 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 as 3 or 4 kids ran inside from the door. The one leading them, Su Shu estimated to be around 8 or 9 years old, had a dark face with particularly bright eyes. He bounced in with his backpack on and immediately spotted the milk candy on the table. Feng Hua didn't have a chance to say a word before her own son had swiped the candy. Feng Hua cursed, "You little monkey, you've got sharp eyes, don't you? Didn't you see we have guests? Can't you greet people?" The little boy looked up, glanced at Shushu and then at Zai, who was a head shorter than him, and grinned. "Hello, Auntie. Hello, little sister." Sushu laughed. He seemed quite cheerful. "Hello." As for Zai, of course, she continued to remain silent. The little boy was quick-handed, and in no time had thrown a piece of milk candy into his mouth, while he effortlessly passed the remaining piece to his chubby good buddy. "Here you go." "Thanks, bro." Little Fatty was pleasantly surprised. Feng Hua pointed at her younger son's back and scolded. "This little rascal, his craving for sweets is terrible. Sorry for the scene, miss." "Not at all kids are like that." No sooner had she finished speaking than the two boys returned, and not only had they come back, but they were followed by a string of little tykes, all staring intently at Su Shu. Su Shu didn't understand and looked at Feng Hua for an explanation. Feng Hua didn't understand either. "Doozy, what now?" Doozy grinned and turned to Su Shu. "Auntie, the milk candy just now was so delicious. Do you have any more?" Su Shu was taken aback and didn't quite catch on at first. Feng Hua cursed loudly. "You greedy little thing, I'm going to beat you. Is this how you ask for stuff from a guest?" Doozy ran off shouting. "I'm not asking for it, I have pocket money. I want to buy it from the auntie from the city." At this point, Su Shu finally realized what was happening. Could it be that the 2 pieces of candy Zaya had triggered the village children's cravings? Watching Doozy run while still pulling pocket money from his pocket, she couldn't help but want to laugh. Looking at the dozen or so kids standing nearby, she thought that maybe Doozy liked the taste and wanted to buy some from her to share with his buddies, huh? That's quite noble of him. Su Shu whispered something to Zai, who hesitated for a moment and then nodded her head after some thought. So Su Shu stood up and stopped Feng Hua. "Sister Feng, don't hurt the child, it's just a few pieces of candy. I still have plenty in my car, you know, snacks, all kids like them. It's not easy to buy them here, I do have a few good ones. Wait here, I'll go get them." Feng Hua, feeling embarrassed, hurried to stop her, but Su Shu cheerfully said it was no big deal and headed out to the car to get the snacks. Fortunately, the villagers were no longer as curious about her car as they had been when she first arrived. She opened the trunk, which was usually empty, certainly not filled with snacks. She looked around to make sure no one was watching, then bent over as if reaching for something from the car. In reality, she was taking out some of Zaya's snacks from the space. Looking at the sudden appearance of 2 or 3 big bags of snacks in the trunk, not just milk candy, but also all sorts of flavored candies and snacks hard to find in this area, she took out quite a lot. She had brought many high-calorie foods from the city to Peng Village, some snacks that might even have been grabbed unintentionally or on purpose. While grabbing other items, Su Shu also took out a box of compressed biscuits. The apocalypse was coming soon, and keeping some extraordinary items that wouldn't seem too out of place might just come in handy at a critical moment. Snacks, they're absolutely the hard currency in the world of children. Before long, Su Shu and Zai's image towered in the eyes of the children of Peng Village, even higher than the mountains behind the village. As for the adults of Peng Village, the sentiment was naturally, "Treat my child well, and I'll treat you well in return." So what followed, even Su Shu herself hadn't anticipated, was the unprecedented warmth and hospitality she received when old Third Peng and the village chief's wife, Feng Hua, took her to choose chickens and ducks from the villagers' homes. Su Shu felt deeply moved, realizing that heartfelt sincerity was indeed reciprocated between people. Her unintentional actions had actually paved the way for a good start in collecting her goods. After the children received their snacks, they didn't eat them all by themselves, but took most of them home to share with their families. In homes where there were more than 1 or 2 children, the adults could not help but inquire when they saw their children suddenly bringing something home. After asking around and hearing affirmative responses from others, everyone had their calculations. watching their own children eat happily, and sometimes being offered a few bites of things they had never tasted before in their lives. The adults felt not only the sweetness on their tongues, but also a sweetness in their hearts like honey. The children only cared whether the snacks were tasty, but the adults could gauge how expensive they were. Moreover, some people from the village who had dealings with the townships and cities would state during conversations that such snacks could cost several tens of yuan in the big cities, and the generous guest would hand out several bags at a time. For the several children in your house, they would say, each could easily consume the worth of a chicken. Some parents almost choked on the tasty morsels, asking cautiously, "Are they that expensive?" Certainly, that's chocolate high in calories, sweet. We don't consider it a treasure, it's impractical, but city folk really love it. They give it to each other on occasions like Valentine's Day. An inexpensive one costs a few yuan, pricey ones go for tens, and the even more expensive ones can reach hundreds or thousands. That lady boss gave out 10 big boxes for our kids to share, she's wealthy. I see you raise a good number of chickens and ducks. It wouldn't hurt to sell her a couple more. She definitely won't mind the cost. The girl who had gained worldly experience from working out of town said, grinning, as she finished her own piece and headed back to the house across the way. The Liu family, a household of 9, stood beside their vegetable garden dumbfounded. Oh dear, too expensive. Too expensive. The old couple hesitated to swallow any more, and then they looked beside them at their brood of 5 sons and 2 daughters, each with cheeks puffed, eyeing the snack. Should we swallow or swallow? There were several other families with similar experiences, but Su Shu was unaware of all this. She only knew that when old third Peng and sister Feng took her to see the poultry, people offered not just freshly boiled eggs or freshly baked sweet potatoes, but an abundance of fruits, crisp pastries, and sugar confections. It was an enthusiasm that almost overwhelmed her. Old third Peng roared, "She's here to look at your chickens and ducks. What are you trying to do? Stuff the girl to death with food. Everyone, take it easy. If you're that eager, go to your coops and bring out some of the better specimens for us to see." Su Shu couldn't help but clap inside, thinking that one is truly as strong as when one is young. At his shout, everyone promptly became much more reasonable and led her smilingly to see their birds. Su Shu had already made up her mind for this visit. Although she didn't know what her space would be like in the future, at present it wasn't very large. If she were to raise poultry, she couldn't have too many, or else it would be overcrowded. Furthermore, she really had no experience with raising these things and didn't know if she could do it well, so she planned to buy just a few. After asking old third Peng, she said to everyone, "I'd like to have 10 hens and 50 roosters, and the same numbers for ducks." Everyone was stunned. What happened to the large purchase they were expecting? Just over 100. Su Shu stared at the numerous disheartened gazes and nodded with difficulty. "I only need so many live poultry for now." Old Master Peng had thought she would want more, so he made the rounds, hopping to help the villagers earn some extra money. Who would have thought the young girl only wanted about 100? In a village like theirs, that really wasn't much, and just a few families could provide enough. He had felt a bit dissatisfied initially. Suddenly hearing her mention live poultry, the old man, with keen ears and sharp eyes, quickly realized and turned to ask Su Shu. "Su girl, do you mean you only want this amount of live poultry?" "Yes, that's right, Grandpa Peng. I only want a little over 100 live poultry, but I will probably want more of the other goods." "Oh, you mean you don't just want this little bit this time, but you'll also buy other things, right?" "Yes," Su Shu smiled. "Since live poultry is not very convenient to transport, I'll just buy a bit for now. Because the poultry here is fed with homegrown grain which is very nutritious, I like it a lot. If the situation allows after I return, I might come back again. Other than live poultry, I actually also want to buy some of your village's smoked meat, and of course, as many chicken and duck eggs as I can get." As soon as Su Shu finished speaking, the previously discouraged crowd suddenly had their eyes light up. Grandpa Peng laughed heartily. "You little girl, to buy our village's smoked meat. Of course, before coming here, boss, you even mentioned that our village is actually not famous for lake rice, but for our century-old smoked meat craft. Am I right?" Su Shu also smiled lightly. Some villagers chimed in with laughter. "Grandpa Peng, you better ask Su boss more about what she wants. It would be good for us to know, eh? Besides smoked meat, do you need any cured pork, salted fish, dried vegetables, or anything else?" "Exactly, exactly. If the price is right, I have quite a lot at home, perfect to sell and get some money to add to my daughter's dowry." A woman joined in the commotion. "Ah, has your daughter's marriage been settled?" "Settled, settled, it's next month." Within a few exchanges, the two women had started discussing their daughters' weddings. Su Shu listened with a smile, finding it exceedingly interesting. She had never seen such a lively and warm village. Wasn't it said that villages with many aunts and uncles are full of trouble? Yet, as she saw Peng village, it was boisterously alive, with everyone warmly watching out for each other. Grandpa Peng cleared his throat with a cough and barked, "Save the chit-chat for your Kang at home. We're talking business here." "Yes, Grandpa Peng, we hear you." A wave of collective laughter followed. Grandpa Peng asked Su Shu, "Girl, you heard them. What about the things he just mentioned? Do you need any?" Su Shu thought for a moment, hesitant. Boss Yu had said that Peng Village's smoked meat was delicious and had a long shelf life. After the road was built, the village often sent goods to the town and even to restaurants in the city. It was initially intended as an economic pillar for the village, but due to the mountain roads not being fully developed and outside investments not yet secured, it couldn't scale up. So the village produced the meat in small workshops and then collectively sold it. The smoked meat was made from fresh chicken and didn't last as long as cured meat, but it was tastier and kept longer than what was available in the city. It was Peng Village's heritage craft. As she walked around, she realized that Peng Village, perhaps due to being surrounded by mountains and naturally suitable for chicken farming, had a lot of live animals in every home. In just over a month, if the apocalypse came, she didn't know how many of these domestic animals would survive. So she thought, using her purchase as an excuse, she could encourage the village to produce more long-lasting food and keep fewer live animals. She would take less for herself and leave most for them, or set a time after the apocalypse to pick up more produce. Once the apocalypse broke out, even if she wanted a second batch, she felt that the people of Peng Village wouldn't sell to her anymore. Yet for cured meat, salted fish, dried vegetables, these things that could be more precious than gold in the apocalypse, she didn't know whether she should take them. She looked around and all eyes were tense due to her hesitation, but she couldn't bring herself to voice her thoughts. With Peng Village's location, how crucial food would become once the apocalypse arrived, they didn't understand, but she did. Peng Sanai asked, "What's the matter, girl? Those are good products from our village, all naturally grown, much better than those chemical-laden and farmed products in the city. We're not asking for much, think about it." Seeing Peng San staring at her with a hopeful expression, Su Shu's lips moved slightly, unsure how to respond. She could keep it from them that the apocalypse was coming, since even if she told them, they might not believe her. However, she couldn't, knowing what she did, take away so much of what might be crucial to their survival in the future. Feng Jai, standing nearby, also chimed in. "Miss Su, are you worried about buying too much to carry?" "No worries, my nephew can drive, and we can find someone to deliver your goods to the town, so you don't need to feel burdened." Su Shu said, "Sanai Feng Jai, that's not the issue." "That's not it. Well, that's a relief. I feel that these dried vegetables and cured meats weren't easy to make, and I think you initially made them not to sell but to store for your own use. If I bought them, it would disrupt your original plans. I've thought about it, and it doesn't seem right, Sushu sincerely said. Hearing this, an old lady laughed and said, not at all. Farm folks live by the principle of eating more when there's plenty and eating less when there's not. As long as we're not starving, that's fine. Besides, when you buy, you're not taking it for free, right? You're paying for it with money. Our products are definitely better than those from outside, and everyone is just hopping to earn some money to pay off the debts from previous famines and save for weddings. Doesn't that also require money? Exactly. Nowadays, wedding ceremonies and dowries cost a lot. Just the other day, someone's wedding expenses reached 30,000. Think about it, in a place like ours, where do we get 30,000 a year, right? Yes, previous years didn't have this, but this year the village chief said if the lake rice sells well, everyone could get a good share. Upon hearing this, everyone's smiles, hopeful for better days, brightened even more. Sushu stood still for a moment, a bit troubled. Should she buy? Honestly, she would have loved to buy everything. But she couldn't do that. She only needed to gather enough supplies to sustain herself and Zai through the apocalypse. She had not spoken yet, and everyone was looking at each other, unsure if she was going to buy. Since spring, every household had gathered numerous wild vegetables from the mountains, and what couldn't be consumed was dried as preserved vegetables, a regular practice in their village, not abundant in every household but sufficient for each. These products aren't valuable in the countryside, but they had heard that wild vegetables from the mountains fetched a high price in the cities. What a great opportunity this was to make some money. Just as there was a deadlock between the two sides, someone in the crowd said, "Does the young lady want them fresh? There are fresh wild vegetables in the mountains right now. How about we pick some for you to see?" "That's right, just go and pick them now. This season, the mountain has plenty of wild vegetables and fruits." With everyone's gaze suddenly focused on Sushu, her eyes brightened. That was a great idea. Seeing the smile on her face, everyone knew she liked the suggestion, so Peng Sanai took the lead in discussing with her what kind of mountain goods she wanted. The villagers originally had dried vegetables and cured meat, and if some families didn't have enough hands to go into the mountains, she could buy a little from them, while other families who could devote labor to harvesting wild vegetables in the mountains while working in the fields, she would purchase at preset prices. Like this, Su Shu made an initial purchase agreement of 100,000 yuan with the villagers, which included seasonal wild vegetables, mountain produce, and labor costs for airing and drying goods by the villagers, among other things. For amounts exceeding the agreement, she would also pay in cash, which is to say, as long as the villagers of Peng Village had the capacity to harvest, she would pay every penny. Old Peng had done a great service for the villagers and felt very happy, urging his neighbors with a rare smile on his face. "There's money-making work now. Everyone better be alert and work hard." "Haha, rest assured, old man, just watch." The crowd roared with laughter. After much effort in finalizing the arrangements, Su Shu felt much lighter on her shoulders. The kids were playing together in a group, and the adults gathered in another, laughing and brimming with joy as they discussed where they might find which wild vegetables on the mountains the next day. In their happiness, they teased each other about whether their old arms and legs could still manage climbing, which was always met with playful retorts like, "PSH, I still don't know if you're up to it, old-timer." Su Shu sat next to old Peng on a stone bench in the courtyard of the village committee. Suddenly, Su Shu remembered she had wanted to see if she could buy a couple of fruit trees for Zion, so she asked old Peng about it. "Grandpa Peng, I want to ask, does anyone in our village grow fruit trees?" Old Peng said, "Fruit trees? Yeah. Sai, we really don't have those. Even if we did, they'd be very old ones planted by families a long time ago. Fruit trees are cash crops. They need to be sold when in season. You've seen our location, it's not convenient to come and go, so people don't grow them. Why, Zaiasu, are you thinking of buying fruits too?" Oh, it's not that. My niece really loves fruits, so I was thinking about buying some from the villagers in the next couple of days. Since there were no fruit trees, she didn't say much more. The villagers' own trees would at best yield one or two per household. How could she buy them? Thinking it over, old Peng suddenly shouted at a round-faced woman in the crowd. Hey, the wife of the second virtue, didn't your eldest lad go to Fairy Spring in the mountains a while ago? On the other side, the wife of the second virtue stopped laughing and turned around with a smile. Yes, old Peng, what's the matter? Are the orchards by Fairy Spring still there? Yes, still there, quite a few. My eldest said they've already set young fruits, might turn red in a few days. The young ones are always hanging around there, saying they'll call us over to pick them when they're red. Old Peng turned to Su Shu and said, We have an orchard behind the mountains by Fairy Spring. It grows wild peaches. If you're interested, I could have someone take you to see tomorrow. Wild peaches, are they sour? Su Shu asked. Normally wild peaches are sour, and not very tasty, right? Haha, they are not sour. They might be a bit sour in other places, but those by the spring are not sour at all. They're quite tasty, he reassured her. Great, then I'll go take a look tomorrow. In the evening, smoke rose from the chimneys, and the village was serene and peaceful under the rosy sunset. Zaya had been playing so hard, suddenly having so many enthusiastic playmates to introduce her to all sorts of new rural games. She was glowing with joy. Su Shu just sat nearby, watching Zaya's happiness and waiting for the supposedly lively pig slaughter feast in the evening. However, as the sun set and the afterglow vanished, and the darkening sky gradually enveloped the earth, the bonfire in the central square of the village remained unlit. Sudden urgent footsteps came from behind, and out of curiosity Su Shu turned around, only to see a villager rush into the courtyard of the village committee. She stood up and blinked, hearing two sets of footsteps walking briskly outwards. Old Peng's expression was grave. What's going on? We told him not to go there when he left. Why does he never listen? We old folks might as well talk to the wind. Once they get a bit of confidence, they think they can do what they want, but if they anger the mountain god, we'll be the ones to suffer. The sky gradually darkened, and the woods became quieter and quieter. The hunting team from Peng village had been circling in the mountain hollow of Liangjia Peak for 3 rounds, unable to find their way out. Some members of the team, who were more impatient, began to grumble quietly. Though their voices were not loud, the situation still affected the emotions of those around them, making the crowd grow restless. Even Hunter Zhang, who had just returned from inspecting the fork in the road ahead, had a dark expression on his face. Clearly, the results of his exploration were not good. The village chief, Peng Chunlai, sounded a bit anxious. Uncle Zhang, how did it go? Hunter Zhang made a gesture with his hand, pressing down twice, signaling everyone to rest in place. After Peng Chunlai relayed the message to the people behind him, the villagers collectively sat down to rest, opening their provision of dry food and water to replenish their strength. Hunter Zhang was discussing with Peng Chunlai and 3 other leading villagers about what to do next. Meanwhile, Tang Zelen and Yuan Zio, who were positioned midway to the back, received the instruction to rest and found a flat patch of brush to sit cross-legged and rest. Tang Zelen handed a water flask to Yuan Zio, who was desperately thirsty, gulping down 2 big mouthfuls before wiping his mouth, glancing ahead, and then turning to his brother. Boss, do you think this old hunter is reliable? We've been wandering around this broken mountain for most of the day, and yet there's still no sign of an exit. Tang Zelen handed him half a biscuit. Talk less, do more. Yuan Zio took it, biting into it. Hey bro, don't you think there's something eerie going on in these mountains? How come we just set traps and caught some pheasants and hares and now we're trapped here? I haven't even grabbed a feather yet. Tang Zelen kept his gaze fixed ahead while listening to Yuan Zio ramble. noticing that Hunter Zhang and the village chief seemed to have a disagreement, as if the villagers were at fault, relentlessly trying to placate the old hunter's temper. Tang Zelin narrowed his eyes in thought and whispered to Yuan Zio, "Before we set off, I saw Peng Sanai arguing with the village chief. Now, the old hunter is also having a dispute with them. This trip into the mountains might not be just about hunting." Upon hearing that the matter was not that simple, Yuan Zio's radar-like gossipy ears instantly perked up. "Spill it." Their position was still a few meters away from the nearest villager. The two of them spoke in hushed tones, and others nearby could only hear vaguely. Tang Zelin shook his head. "I don't know what the heck is going on." Yuan Zio's burning curiosity was immediately extinguished. He moaned lowly, "Bro, I thought you had some top-secret info. Turns out you don't know either. But I guess it's not a highly secret matter." Yuan Zio rolled his eyes, understanding. "Right, if it were really critical, they wouldn't let us outsiders tag along, right?" Tang Zelin hummed in agreement, his attention still on the scene unfolding ahead. Perhaps it was the bizarre dream from last night affecting him, or perhaps it was because wandering around in the woods had yielded no results, but he opted for a static instead of active approach, quietly waiting for the villagers to finish their discussion. Yuan Zio said, "Bro, when you came to this village before, was it ever like this?" Tang Zelin knew what Yuan Zio meant. Had something this strange ever happened in the village before? Honestly, it had not. He shook his head. Yuan Zio arched his eyebrows, his mouth curling slightly. "So did we hit the jackpot this time?" As they whispered, they suddenly heard Hunter Zhang up front cursing in fury. "Wasn't this supposed to be a hunting trip? You said you wanted to hunt wild animals, which is why I agreed to lead the team. But village chief, you bringing things you shouldn't have brought. Do you want to get everyone killed?" The bonfire in Peng village never ended up being lit that evening. Not only was it not lit, Su Shu faintly sensed that the atmosphere in the village had become somewhat heavy. Peng Sanai and some of the elders headed toward the foot of the mountain, as if they had some urgent matters to handle. Standing at the entrance of the village community center, she gently stopped the village chief's wife who was just about to enter. "Sister Feng, is it because I've come?" She didn't finish her sentence, knowing in her heart that perhaps the issue wasn't related to her, yet she said it as a mere courtesy. Feng Hua patted her on the arm and said, "Sister Su, don't worry too much, it has nothing to do with you. Wait for me a moment, I'll take you home soon, you just stay put and think of nothing. When morning comes and it's bright, I'll arrange for someone to collect and ship your goods." "Okay, no rush." She pointed toward the foot of the mountain. "I just saw Peng Sanai and the others heading up the mountain. Is it safe this late?" "They are not really going into the mountain, just to the base to check things out, and then they'll come back. No one from the village who went into the mountain has returned or sent any signals yet, so Sanai and the others are a bit worried, but it's nothing." With that said, if she still couldn't understand, then she would be too foolish. The other party didn't want to divulge too much. She wisely didn't ask further and called Zai, who was still reluctantly lingering under the starlight, to come back. Feng Hua went inside for some unknown reason and soon came back out. "Let's go, we're heading home." Thus, Su Shu and Zai went to stay at Sister Feng's house. After eating an authentic rural meal at Feng Hua's home, Feng Hua said there was some unfinished business and left. Su Shu and Zai played a children's version of a card game on the warm kang in the side room. Soon there was a knock on the door. "Who is it?" "Aunt Su, it's me, Dongzi." Su Shu put down the cards and hurriedly went to open the door, only to see Dongzi enter with a small basin, lowering his head under her armpit and heading straight for Zai. "Zai, look, what's this?" Su Shu closed the door and came back, laughing when she saw what Dongzi was holding. "Did you bake these?" "Ah, while my mom was cooking dinner, I used the remaining heat to bake a few. They're really fragrant." "Aunt Su, You and Zaya have a taste." Su Shu smiled, pulled up a small dining table by the side, and patted it, upon which Dongzi placed a small basin of baked potatoes. The three gathered around the small table and started eating. Remembering that Feng Hua hadn't returned yet, curiosity struck her as she peeled the hot potato skins and asked, "Dongzi, I see there are so many mountains here. Much more than in our city. Do people from the village often go hunting in the mountains?" Clutching the steaming hot potato, Dongzi wiped his mouth and said, "No, there are rules for hunting in the mountains. Usually, people only forage for wild vegetables or set traps to catch a rabbit or two by the foothills. Not many dare to go deep into the mountains now." "Oh, I noticed Peng Grandpa and the others didn't look so good today." Su Shu took a bite, which was scalding hot. Dongzi said, "There were many people who went this time. They had to camp in the mountain. Recently, something's not right in the village, so Grandpa Peng and the others didn't let my dad and them venture too far into the deep mountain. They were supposed to send a signal after setting up camp at night, but it seems like there has been no movement. Something might have gone wrong, maybe." Su Shu was slightly shocked and looked up to say, "Something went wrong." Dongzi is but a child, no matter how clever. It's hard to keep things concealed, especially since Su Shu had given them so many treats during the day. Dongzi didn't treat her as an outsider and just said what was on his mind. "I'm not too sure myself, as the adults don't let us kids go into the mountains to play, always scaring us with tales of monsters that eat children. But I know there are none." Dongzi lifted his head, thought for a moment, and added, "However, I once heard my dad and mom mention that there's something like a mesmerizing array in the mountains, quite dangerous." After speaking, he even nodded emphatically and said, "It seems really quite formidable. Before, anyone from our village who wanted to go there never came back." "Never came back as in, they died?" Su Shu asked. "Don't know. Anyway, they just never came back. When daylight came and they went to look for them there, they couldn't find anyone," Doozy said. Listening to Doozy, Su Shu felt as if she were hearing a fantasy. Such strange and supernatural occurrences made her uncomfortable late at night, so she shifted the conversation away from the affairs of the mountain and didn't pay much attention to it. Zai was still young and had just had her meal, so she couldn't eat much. Su Shu used a spoon to scrape off the fragrant outer layer and fed it to her, leaving the slightly astringent part for herself. Doozy laughed at the sight, saying his mother used to feed him the same way. Su Shu said, "Then your mother must really love you." Doozy smiled simply and said nothing. Late at night, Zai was already sound asleep. Just as Su Shu was falling asleep, she heard footsteps outside the window, followed by the neighboring door closing in response. "Oh, it must be Sister Feng returning." Reassured, Su Shu closed her eyes and went asleep. The next day, early in the morning, the roosters in the village crowed one after another. When Su Shu opened her eyes, she felt sore all over, having driven for half the day and then busying herself for quite a while, feeling as if she were weighted down with lead. The moment she opened her eyes, Zaya also rubbed her eyes and got up. Outside, the roosters were crowing, and Zaya listened with fascination, lying on her stomach in the bed, perking up her little ears and listening intently. Su Shu found her adorable early in the morning. After washing up, getting dressed, and having her breakfast of Xiaomi porridge and pancakes, Sister Feng indeed came with 2 trucks, delighted to find Su Shu. When Su Shu saw the 2 trucks in the village square, she was quite surprised. She had thought Feng Hua was just saying she would find someone to help transport the goods, but she hadn't expected to find 2 large trucks waiting. "Sister Feng, this." Feng Hua smiled and said, "Look, you bought so much stuff from us, and it's not easy for a girl to take it all back home. Since Chun Yua's husband recommended you come here, we'll help you send it to City. See this truck. One is used by the village for hauling, and the other I had someone borrow from next door yesterday. We used to deliver Lake Rice the same way." Don't feel burdened." Su Shu wanted to say she felt no burden at all. She was very grateful. Last night before going to bed, she had kept thinking about how she had bought too much and how she was going to take it all back. Ultimately, she would have had to store it in the space, but she couldn't exactly collect things in front of people so openly. Luckily, she had a warehouse in City C. She had planned to ask Feng Hua to arrange for a few trucks in the morning, but she hadn't expected that they had already taken care of everything for her. She couldn't help but feel a growing fondness for Feng Hua and Peng Village. "Thank you." "Hey, no need to be polite. Today, you just take care of receiving the goods. I've also found a few people to help you sort them. You just give an address and let them deliver it directly to your home, so you don't have to worry," Feng Hua said. Su Shu left the address, and Sister Feng gave it to the truck drivers. Now that they had goods and trucks, after everyone had breakfast, they started selling their merchandise on the square in front of the village committee. Su Shu, carrying a waste bag, placed the money she took out from the space inside it, in bundles that made the villagers delivering the goods happy, showing that she really wanted to buy. Money exchanged hands for goods, and it wasn't long before she had enough chickens and ducks. As for the other merchandise, Su Shu would also buy depending on the situation. Feng Hua kept a watchful eye, and the two of them could tell that this girl was sincere. She offered fair prices, neither too high nor too low, which made the villagers happy to come and sell and satisfied as they left. Feng Hua, assisting by her side, was also pleased. While chatting and laughing with the villagers who came to sell their goods, she was meticulous about checking the quality for Su Shu. She wouldn't tolerate anyone trying to trick the young lady with inferior products pretending they were better. That just wouldn't do. She had heard from her man that Chun Hua, the head of the household back in City C, was hopping to do long-term business with this girl, and they couldn't afford to leave a bad impression. Like this, in just half a day, everything from poultry with cages to a pile of various acquired items filled up a cart. Feng Hua took a moment to ask Su Shu, "Sister, how would you like to handle it? Should we send off a full cart for you now, or wait for the folks from the mountains to return so you can select some fresh game and send 2 carts together?" After talking for a long time, Su Shu felt her mouth dry and drank a sip of mineral water before she looked up at the sun. "Let's send off 1 cart first." Since she had made a purchase, earlier arrival was better. However, she decided to change the delivery address on the fly, making a morning call to Boss Yu, a grain seller in City C, to see if he could receive the goods first and help with taking them in. The person on the other end readily agreed. When Su Shu was receiving goods, she paid particular attention to the village affairs and noticed that most of those who came to sell were women from the village, with fewer men than she had seen the day before. It was just about lunchtime for a break, so she mentioned her suspicions to Feng Hua. Feng Hua replied, "Old San and his group went into the mountains early this morning." "Into the mountains? Isn't it dangerous for Old San at his age?" "No problem, his generation when they were young, they used to run deep into the mountains all the time. They won't go far in, they'll just accomplish some tasks and return." Although Feng Hua was explaining to her the whereabouts of Old San and his group with each sentence, he didn't directly state what the matter was, so Su Shu understood she shouldn't inquire too deeply. After filling 1 truck in the morning and sending it on its way, which happened to be the one Feng Hua borrowed from a neighboring village, it disappeared from view after half a day's trip to City C. Feng Hua made another call to Boss Yu in City C on behalf of Peng Village to confirm the rough time schedule, officially considering the matter settled. With most goods sold by the afternoon and only a few left over, Su Shu thought of the orchard by the fairy spring and told Feng Hua she wanted to check it out. Feng Hua was efficient and, without any fuss, found a big sister to help receive the goods of the villagers who were still coming to sell their bits and pieces, knotting the accounts to settle later upon return. When the sun was less intense, the younger son from Erda's family, having heard the news, hurried over to lead Su Shu into the mountains. Su Shu never inquired about Feng Hua's whereabouts again from beginning to end. She had an inkling that something major might have indeed happened to Peng village. The path into the mountains was wide and easy to travel, different from what she had imagined before her arrival. Leaning on a stick she had found, Su Shu climbed and commented incidentally, "Seeing this path, it's clear that it's been used a lot, hasn't it?" The young man leading the way was originally called Liangliang, a little shy by nature but not introverted. However, he didn't like being called Liangliang. When Su Shu asked why, he said it felt too girlish for him. He preferred to be called Liangzi, like Doozy behind him, feeling that adding Zai gave a bit more of a heroic touch. Su Shu quite liked the young man, thinking to herself that he was so considerate about his name, that actually, Liangliang suited him well. Instead of joining the hunting team into the mountains, Liangzi had been guarding Fairy Spring's side with several other boys his age. The road was easy because the villagers had been using water from Fairy Spring for farming in the past 2 years. There are no paths in this world until they are trodden by many feet, and then paths are made. Without meaning to, Su Shu remembered this saying. Liangzi, with a basket on his back, was leading Su Shu deeper into the mountains, with Doozy, who also carried a basket and planned to gather something, following behind them. After walking for half a day, Su Shu finally saw a white misty expanse through a gap shielded by a forest in the distance. "We've arrived," Liangzi said. Following behind, Su Shu dodged a tree branch, followed Liangzi out of the woods, and was met with an open vista. She finally saw that pond of Fairy Spring hidden amidst the mountain valley. Gazing at the breathtaking scene in front of her, Su Shu couldn't believe that such a heavenly spring was created by a lightning strike. It was too delightful. Especially situated among these mountain forests, there was a fairy spring, misty with spiritual energy, where the integration of mountains and water formed a unique delicacy that no ordinary words could describe, let alone the patches of peach grove surrounding the spring. Su Shu felt that her eyes weren't enough to take it all in, so she couldn't help but take out her phone from her pocket and snapped several photos continuously. It was beautiful. Liangzi took a few big steps, turned around, and saw Su Shu standing still taking photos. He silently stepped aside, afraid of blocking her view. Behind them, Doozy didn't think as much. He swung his head, humming a mountain tune while carrying a basket on his back, and rushed forward, shouting as he went, "Aunt Su, come on. There's something fun ahead." Su Shu quickly took a few more panoramic shots, put away her phone, and followed them. From a distance, the fairy spring and peach grove seemed close at hand, but actually walking from the edge of the forest to it still took some steps. Liangzi remained by Su Shu's side the whole time, occasionally advising her. Ever since the fairy spring suddenly appeared in these mountains, the birds and beasts often come here to drink, so be careful. Su Shu looked down at the path and asked, "This place is so close to the village nearby. Do wild animals also come here?" "Usually, they don't come often, but it's scary when you occasionally encounter one or two confused ones. This spot is often frequented by birds from the sky for brief rests," Liangzi explained. "Okay, got it," Su Shu said. Before long, they reached the edge of the fairy spring. Liangzi secured the sickle from his basket onto his waist, cautiously scanned the surroundings for a while, then took out a cup from his basket to scoop some spring water and handed it to Su Shu. "Try it, it's very sweet." Su Shu smiled as she took it, sipped a few mouthfuls from the edge of the cup. Upon tasting it for the first time, her eyes lit up, and she was totally amazed. "It's really delicious." Hearing this, Liangzi's face flushed with pride. "Right. The spring water from our mountains is really tasty. That's why Lake Rice is so good." Su Shu nodded repeatedly, taking several more big gulps to quench her thirst. She wasn't lying at all. This water was unlike any other she had tasted before, truly delicious. After finishing her drink, she gently wiped her mouth, turned around and looked around. Pointing at the peach grove near the spring, the peaches hanging on the branches were not fully ripe, but were plump and enticing, promising an irresistible taste once they matured. "Is that peach grove planted by your villagers?" Liangzi shook his head. "No, after the fairy spring appeared, they somehow just grew here." Su Shu clicked her tongue in amazement, put down her cup, and couldn't help but walk up and stood under a peach tree to look up and closely inspect each peach. Delicious. She thought that once these peaches matured, they would definitely taste wonderful, recalling what she heard yesterday from Grandpa Peng asking the villagers, that it indeed takes a decisive amount of time for these peaches to ripen, which made her feel a bit regretful. Unfortunately, she could not stay for 2 more days. Otherwise, she really wanted to taste what next to the fairy spring would turn out like. She came to see the fairy spring out of curiosity and also for the fruit trees. Now that she had seen the very delightful peach trees, she was itching to try and see if she could transplant a live plant into her space. Before Liangzi and Duzi arrived, Feng Hua had already instructed that if they saw any early ripe peaches in the peach grove, they should pick a few for Su Shu to try. Thus, the two began wandering through the peach grove, searching for any ripe fruits. Su Shu hadn't noticed. Her attention was continuously focused on whether she could transplant the peach tree into her own space. After pondering for a long time, she wanted to give it a try, so she looked up in the direction of Liangzi and Duzi. They were still searching in the peach grove and hadn't noticed her here, so she touched the ink jade ring on her finger and concentrated silently, attempting to collect the tree. As a result, failure. The peach tree in front of her didn't budge an inch. She didn't want to give up and tried 2 or 3 more times, still no change. Her repeated focus actually made her head a bit tired. After taking several deep breaths, she decided to walk around and rest for a bit before trying again. She couldn't believe that she couldn't get even 1 peach tree today. After a while, Liangzi and Duzi came out of the grove, holding some ripe peaches, their faces beaming with joy, and shouted to Su Shu, "Aunt Su, come quickly, the peaches are ripe." Duzi was the most enthusiastic, followed closely by Liangzi. The two of them skillfully washed several peaches in the spring water and brought them back to Su Shu. Su Shu picked a peach that looked delicious, glanced at it, opened her mouth wide, and took a big bite, venting all the frustration of not being able to collect a single peach tree after so much effort on this peach. Who knew? Woo woo woo, she wanted to cry. Holy shit, these peaches are freaking delicious. After eating several bites, her usually picky stomach completely betrayed her for this rare delicacy, unable to resist leaning towards the sweetness of the peaches. Su Shu felt such resentment in her heart. She cursed herself for being so stupid. She tried for so long and still couldn't transplant a single one. There were so many trees in the peach grove. There must be hundreds, and she wasn't greedy. She'd be satisfied with just one, so why couldn't it work? After finishing 1 peach, Su Shu turned around. After eating the delicious peach, when she looked at the peach grove loaded with fruit, her eyes glowed like a wolf's. Today, even if she had to try every single tree in the grove, she was determined to find one that she could move into her space. From beginning to end, Liangzi and Duzi never noticed the change in her heart, thinking that her eagerness was just from never having tasted such delicious peaches before. Although they were rural people from the mountains, they knew from adults' conversations that city people, despite their affluent lives, were especially fond of these kinds of wild, natural things, so the 2 boys didn't think too much about it. After eating, they told Su Shu, "There are some more ripe ones back there. We simply came across them. We'll go pick them and be right back." Su Shu nodded repeatedly. "All right, you guys go pick them. This peach grove is beautiful. I'll take a look around." Okay, be careful. No problem. Liangzi and Doozy took their baskets and went into the grove. Seeing them go deeper, Su Shu walked to the side, picked another peach tree, and tried to collect it with quiet effort. Failure. Switch next tree. Failure. She refused to believe it, switched to another tree. Failure, failure, failure. No matter how many she tried, it was still a failure. Exhausted, Su Shu sat down on the ground, glaring at the peach tree in front of her. She really wanted to take a chainsaw, chop it down, and pack it into her space. Was there not a single tree that would work? Su Shu sat on the ground, dejected for quite a while, her mind swirling with thoughts like, why won't it work? Please give me one tree that will obediently enter my space. Is even one tree too much to ask for? And so on. Just as she was letting out a heavy sigh and about to give up, out of the corner of her eye, she suddenly caught a glimpse of a mini peach tree about the thickness of an arm and half her height at a 45-degree angle to her right front. She rubbed her eyes, trying to see more clearly if she was seeing things. When she confirmed it was indeed a peach tree, she scrambled to her feet from the ground and rushed over, squatting down. Her gaze was now level with the mini and couldn't get any minier little peach tree. Ugh. The trunk was slender, the branches frail, pitifully hiding in the corner. Squatting there, Su Shu raised her finger, counting to herself, 1, 2, 3, 4, 7. It had only 7 fruits. She didn't even mention the small number. She looked at the nearby peach tree, each one majestic and proud, bearing countless fruits, each too large to be gripped in one palm, and here was this super mini tree with only 7 fruits, not even as big as cherries. Excuse me, is this really a peach tree? She might have seen a fake peach tree. The hunting team, trapped in the mountain and unable to find a way out, strove for time to escape the labyrinth at daybreak. No one dared to take the situation lightly, and they followed the lead hunter Zhang, weaving through the woods with difficulty. Despite having an argument with village chief Peng Chunlai the night before, Hunter Zhang still led everyone with due diligence. However, the fog was dense in the woods early in the morning, visibility was extremely low, and given the lingering fears from the day before, there were many cautious delays, which cost considerable time. Yuan Zio couldn't hold out past midnight and slept stuffily until this morning. When he woke up, he was fixated on one thing. At every chance, he wanted to ask Tang Zelen, "Boss, aren't you curious about what the village chief brought into the mountain that made the old hunter angry?" While walking, Tang Zelen checked the surrounding terrain to ensure the direction was correct. As someone who often traversed the mountains, he could see that the leading hunter Zhang was cautious and would not overstep any bounds. He guessed that if it weren't for the unexpected entrapment here, the other party wouldn't have contemplated this step. Regarding the part Yuan Zio was curious about, Tang Zelen turned his head and smiled mischievously. "Do you know why you can't behave recklessly when hunting in the mountains?" Yuan Zio said, "Because there are a lot of rules." Exactly, and the most important rule is, if you shouldn't ponder something, don't ponder it. I don't believe you aren't curious. Climbing up a small hill, Tang Zelen laughed, not curious. If he were curious about everything, he would have died in the primeval forest of Heilongjiang long ago. How could he have survived until now? Yuan Zio was persistent, catching up by leveraging a tree branch to pull himself up. But what if I am curious? He really wanted to know what the village chief had brought into the mountain that caused the old hunter such rage, to the point of declaring it would put everyone in danger. Curiosity killed the cat, and Yuan Zio's heart was as anguished as if it were being clawed at. Yet frustratingly, the boss walking ahead seemed unconcerned. Perhaps they were lucky, or maybe yesterday was just a false alarm. After wandering for half a day, they finally made it out of the maze. Along the way, Tang Zelen noticed that Hunter Zhang had whispered something in the village chief's ear, after which the village chief quietly left the group at a small crossroads and took a different path. Alone in the forest, highly dangerous. Even more bizarre was that all the villagers seemed as if they saw nothing and kept silent. Tang Zelen remained silent too, and Yuan Zio with his nimble eyes glanced around, originally wanting to ask where the village chief had gone. But seeing no one else react, and even Tang Zelen not saying anything after contemplating, he too shut his mouth. All along the way, his eyes were busy looking around, pondering something. An hour later, village chief Peng Kunlai stood at a path ahead, reuniting with the main group. Returning to the team, he approached Hunter Zhang and murmured a few words. Hunter Zhang nodded, his expression much softer than before. "Bro, I'm still curious," Yuan Zio whispered from behind his shoulder. "Let's walk and see." When Tang Zelen said let's walk and see, that meant he was also interested in the matter. Yuan Zio's mouth curved into a smile. If his boss was interested in something, he was sure to get to the bottom of it eventually. However, half an hour later, Yuan Zio was no longer smiling. What the fuck? Grandpa's beard, what bizarre thing has he stumbled upon? A patch of top-grade red lingjai mushrooms, treasures coveted by everyone in Yangxia. Do you think that's odd? No Yuan Zio couldn't figure out when exactly they had been surrounded by a swarm of snakes. He was so frightened that he almost screamed, but fortunately, Tang Zelen pressed heavily on his shoulder, quieting him down. Yuan Zio turned around and saw his boss's eyebrows tightly knitted, his gaze sharp and piercing. "Quiet," he said in a low voice, carrying a convincing magic that made one instantly compliant. Being suddenly besieged by a group of snakes would make anyone tremble in fear. The villagers stood back to back in a circle, facing outward, watching over each other, daring not to make any reckless moves. After the initial moment of panic, Yuan Zio also immediately entered a state of tense alertness. He had encountered being targeted by snakes before, but never had he imagined being targeted by so many at once. Tang Zelen's expression grew solemn as he carefully surveyed the surroundings, his body naturally entering a combat stance. Looking at the sprawling patch of brightly colored snakes ahead, if they weren't careful and angered them, each individual could receive a fatal bite from the snakes, let alone if the entire swarm attacked. The outcome was unimaginable. As everyone held their breath in concentration, Hunter Zhang's face turned ashen once again. "When you went to worship, did you take anything from the forbidden area?" he asked. Village Chief Peng Chunlai was taken aback by the question and shook his head. "No, I didn't take anything. I thought about it, but both third uncle and you advised against it. I dismissed the idea. Our village is doing well now. I cannot risk the villagers' lives." Peng Chunlai was also pale with fright. Hunter Zhang furrowed his brows and his scrutinizing gaze swept through the crowd, unsure where the breach had occurred. The forests around Between Cliffs Mountain had been a place of disputes since the time of our ancestors, yet the game here grew exceptionally well, making the imbalance in wildlife in the mountains apparent to him. He had observed it for some time and noticed that the situation, far from improving, was growing increasingly severe. Hunter Zhang had agreed to lead the team this time, because he feared that if the mountain's imbalance continued, next year the wildlife would descend from the mountains and wreak havoc on people and crops. However, he had never anticipated that they would stir up a swarm of snakes without even doing anything. He appeared calm on the surface, but his heart was filled with unease. He was certain that he had led the hunting team north because beyond this area was the region where wildlife liked to roam, perfect for hunting. After hunting, they planned to collect the traps on the way back, ideally timing it to descend the mountain and return to the village. The plan was sound, but unfortunately, an accident had occurred. Below their feet, the land was covered with red Ganoderma, shiny and brightly colored. Top-grade red Ganoderma was the finest of the fungus found in the mountains, and gathering it during an expedition was usually a cause for joy. But now, none of them could feel any joy. Because amidst this patch of red Ganoderma, a top-grade Lingjai had grown. Its color, shape, and natural charm were deemed perfect. With it present, even the finest Lingjai paled in comparison. However, because it was there, whether it was Hunter Zhang, village chief Peng Chunlai, or anyone else, their faces turned ashen within moments. Only Yuan Zio, who was oblivious to the situation, had cheeks flushed with excitement at the sight of this rare treasure. Tang Zelen was a natural warrior, sensitive to any movement around him. When he heard the muted gasps around him, he knew the situation was extremely bad. "Uncle Zhang, all these snakes are highly venomous. Everyone must be careful," Tang Zelen whispered. He knew that even if he didn't say it, the villagers already understood. But he also knew that in moments of extreme danger, even a single word could unite everyone's focus. Because fear was right in front of them, it would bring them closer together. Hunter Zhang growled in a very low voice. "Whoever took something they shouldn't have from between Cliffs Mountain, hand it over immediately, or no one will get out alive." Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and like the video and comment down if anything wrong in the story. And if have any suggestion to a new novel or want next part of any series, comment down. Our target is to get 1K subscriber. There will be SUPRISC for all of you. Stay tuned.